Hello and welcome to Spatial Realities, the podcast for professionals in XR, spatial computing, and the Metaverse. I'm your host, Thomas Riedel, tech journalist from Cologne. Today, we are heading to Brussels. At the premiere of UnitedXR, I caught up with an absolute heavyweight of the industry, Neil Trevett. If you work in graphics, you know Neil. He is the Vice President of Developer Ecosystems at NVIDIA, President of the Khronos Group, and Chair of the Metaverse Standards Forum. In this conversation, we dive deep into three key topics. First, the current state of the Metaverse Standards Forum. Second, Appl's role in XR and specifically the tension between USD and glTF file formats. And finally, how standard organizations are handling the explosion of AI assets and new tech like Gaussian Splatting. This interview is essential listening if you want to understand the strategic side of XR and how to navigate the competing narratives in our industry. If you enjoy the episode, share it with a colleague. And if you want to support my work and keep this podcast running, you can do so via Ko-fi. You'll find the link and more English episodes in the show notes. And now, enjoy my conversation with Neil Trevett. All right, now I'm with Neil Trevett. Welcome to the show.
Yes, it's good to be here. Thanks for the opportunity.
Of course. So the first question has to be about the Metaverse Standards Forum. Tell us, what's the state of the Metaverse Standards Forum?
Metaverse Standards Forum is doing good. So the genesis of the forum was when Meta announced the Metaverse back in 2021. A lot of people came to the Khronos Group, which is a standards organization. We do a lot of standards that are relevant to like spatial computing, 3D graphics, and XR. We have standards like Vulkan, OpenXR, glTF. A lot of people suddenly became interested in standardization around those technologies. And they said, well, you have standards for the metaverse. And we go, do we? Oh, yes, I guess we do. But of course, it quickly became apparent that we need many more standards from many other organizations, not just Khronos. There's W3C, doing the web, Open Geospatial, doing location-based standards, networking standards, privacy standards. Hundreds of standards are going to be needed from dozens and dozens of standards organizations to enable us to build this spatially connected global platform that we kind of call the metaverse right now. But there was no place for all of those standards organizations to actually coordinate and communicate about what they were doing and how we might actually fill in the gaps and create all the standards that the industry needed to build this thing we call the metaverse. We can talk about what the metaverse is in a moment. So at Khronos, we bootstrapped a forum for standards organizations to get together and to communicate with the wider industry. And we thought we would get like a couple dozen members. And after a month or two, we had 2,500 members, all organizations, not individuals, interested to help us build, interested in our mission at the forum, which is not to build standards. We're not a standards organization. We're not yet another standards organization. We're just a place for communication and cooperation. And we've been working now for almost 3 years, and we've been sending out a lot of data and having a lot of interaction with the standards community and the industry. A lot of passion, a lot of energy. We actually are reorganizing to be, now we have 2 years of experience under our belt. We're organizing to be even more efficient. But yeah, things are going well. And despite all the rumors, the metaverse is not dead.
So what kind of reorganization do you do there?
So when we first started the forum, with all these companies, and we'd never tried doing this kind of higher level of communication before. The standards organizations, they're all very busy, Khronos included. We tend to focus on our own area. We get quite siloed and we don't, talk enough to the other organizations. But when we first set up the forum, we enabled the membership to inform us what were the areas for standardization that were of most interest to them, which was actually, I think, a good way to do it, to start off. We ended up with 18 different working groups, for doing different types of areas. There's networking, there's 3D assets, there's privacy, there's ethics, a whole bunch of different areas. And it was a good way to find out what were the hotspots. But that after 3 years, 2 years, 3 years, we found that there were gaps and overlaps. So now we're rationalizing the 18. Now we know what people are really interested in down into 5 working groups, just so we can be, save our calendars some stress, and get the right people together. So we're going to be rolling that out in the new year. But the essential mission of the forum hasn't changed. It's just we're just going to be more efficient, we hope. Yeah.
Sounds like more focus. Can you elaborate a little bit on what you will focus on, or is it an announcement for next year?
No, there's nothing secret. Everything in the forum is open.
Okay.
Everything is public. So there's no NDA. In general, the 5 areas, 3D assets is still a big thing. There are multiple formats out there like glTF, like OpenUSD and others. We want to make sure to get rid of all the pain points, develop things like avatars. Volumetric media is coming as well. It's going to be an ingredient. So there's lots going on. Spatial computing, which is quite a broad area. But, sensing and connecting things together, IoT, all that kind of stuff. There's an AI working group, which is AI runs through everything, so it's more of a horizontal. There's regulation and privacy, because that's an important part. If we can't trust where our data is going, no one is going to use this platform, no matter how we build it. And then just general ecosystem, things like education, which is important as well.
Yeah. You touched already a topic which, of course, the industry is maybe struggling with or fighting a little bit over for the good or the bad. We have to see that. Apple famously avoids terms like XR or Metaverse. You just said spatial computing. But does this linguistic fragmentation signal any kind of deeper technical fragmentation? Like, is it becoming harder to write a standard that satisfies both Apple ecosystem as well as OpenXR?
So there's 2 questions in there. One is what's the terminology, and is it causing confusion? I think there is confusion over terminology, so we can talk about that. And then there's Apple. So the first one first, which is, I think, the more interesting question. Yes, there is confusion over terminology, which is not helpful, obviously. If you ask 5 people what's the metaverse, you'll get 24 different answers. So the best we've come up with so far, just to frame, we're not trying to dictate to people what the metaverse should be, but we do need to have some coherent way of talking to each other. There was some agreed terminology. So currently, the terminology that we use is actually like an onion ring. In the middle, the core technology is XR,
which can also be discussed what it actually means, but
yes,
it's a good umbrella term for all the technology.
It's a good umbrella. XR came from the Khronos Group when we did OpenXR, and then that was the first use that we were aware of XR, and then it just became used as a general term. And when Khronos defined it, we didn't mean it to be extended reality. That's another term. It wasn't that. It was just put your A or V or M here. But kind of the wearable tech, it can be augmented reality or virtual reality with sensors and displays, basically. And then the next term out is spatial computing, which I think is a common term that Apple uses. I think it's a good term, which is where you use the displays and sensors to actually begin to interact with the immediate environment and to inform the user, in various ways and various experiences. And then the way we use the metaverse term is if you have multiple people doing spatial computing, you connect them together. And that's the metaverse. It's connected spatial computing.
We would have said earlier, like it's social VR.
It's more than that. I mean, the seminal book, and it's a great book, the book by Matthew Bell, to kind of defined the metaverse in a lot of people's minds. And it was a lot of excellent thinking went into that book. But it did kind of go down just one path of what the metaverse could be. And that was lots of people in totally immersive virtual reality environments. And you still see it here, some of the EU programs, immersive worlds, is kind of the terminology that Matthew Bell used. Yeah. I think the metaverse is more than that. And in fact, I think my personal opinion is the metaverse is really going to take off, not with virtual reality, because 8 billion people using virtual reality for 24 hours a day. That's a very dystopian vision.
Yeah, it's written in a book, which is a dystopia.
Yes,
actually.
Yes, exactly. I think AR is going to be the true metaverse, where you're overlaying the real world with spatially registered and contextually useful information to users, bringing people together and bringing people into the real world. I think it's a much healthier and in the end, much more useful vision. So I'm an AR guy rather than a VR. I mean, VR is great and the immersive experiences are great, but you'd want to use them for a couple of hours. You don't want to use it all day, every day. That would be crazy. So that's kind of the division. Now, you asked about Appl. The Appl are an awesome company. They're one of the few companies that have the skills and the resources to kind of build the whole stack themselves. And, that's their traditional business model. And, good for them. They make excellent products. And so far, I mean, I can't speak for Appl in any way, but so far, they're doing the same thing in the spatial computing space as they've done with mobile phones and desktops. So if you look at
pretty much the same scheme over and over again, right?
Yeah. But it's good. People often ask, you're in open standards, you do a lot of stuff with open standards. Don't you hate proprietary products? No.
We all love Nintendo, right?
Yeah. There's a place for openness. There's a place for people who want to do it in a proprietary way. It's always been that way. And very often it's the proprietary platforms that innovate out ahead of people doing open standards. And it's a upward spiral. And then they complement each other. Yeah. So, but right now, Appl is not using any of the spatial computing open standards. That they're continuing to do their own thing.
Yeah. Another question, and you also already mentioned it, is the explosion of AI-generated assets.
Yes.
And that somehow calls for standardization. Are there any plans to do that? Like, for example, Gaussian Splatting?
Yes. Actually, that's a great example. So AI is essential to building this thing we call the metaverse.
Why is that?
Because it solves problems that we've all kind of imagined are going to be solved, like how do you understand your environment? How do you understand what the person is saying? How do you understand their gestures? How do you semantically analyze the scene around the user? How do you provide a useful agent that knows a lot about the context, about the user and the environment, and actually provide useful information? All those things have suddenly become possible. If you think back 2 or 3 years, we had no idea how to do that. But now it has become possible. So AI is going to be used for creating 3D content, for understanding semantics, for understanding the user, and I think also for regulating this complex platform, in content moderation. Now, how are you going to do that? Well, AI, right? It suddenly becomes possible where it wasn't possible before. There are lots of aspects to bringing standardized AI into the metaverse. There's how you use it, but also how do you implement it? And in XR devices and spatial computing devices, it's going to be inferencing that is going to be the key. All these models are trained in the cloud probably, but you want to run it on your glasses or at least lightweight, edge servers. So ML acceleration is key. Now, how do you run it on a low-cost piece of silicon? The Khronos Group is working on building ML acceleration into some of our 3D graphics APIs. So everyone that's building XR devices with displays, using Android or Linux or some other platform. They're probably using the Vulkan 3D API. We're putting ML acceleration instructions into Vulkan, so you can use the same silicon, the same API for doing your ML inferencing as well. Splats is a great example. You're going to want to train your splats potentially on device, so the ML acceleration will be important there. But then you want to display splats. I mean, that's where most of the work comes in once you've trained your splat model. And the 3D asset formats like glTF, we're actively building splat functionality into glTF. Right now, there's actually a...
That's Brussels.
Brussels, I know. There's actually a draft specification on the glTF Khronos website right now. And we're expecting to finalize that early in the new year, early in 2026. So it's happening right now. It's being driven by the geospatial community, but of course it's much broader than its general purpose functionality. But the geospatial community found it to solve so many of their problems that they were the ones that got most excited and kind of led the charge.
Right, so it's actually happening already.
Yeah, it's happening right now.
So last question, the magic wand question. If you would have a magic wand and force the industry to agree on one single standard tomorrow that currently doesn't exist, which one would unlock the most value for the XR ecosystem?
It's a great question. I'm going to answer it, and it's not quite precisely. I think there is one thing that the industry could do. It's not just one standard, because there's so many. You can't pick just one. I think the metaverse is going to be the spatial evolution of the web. I think most people kind of agree on that. It's a global standards-based platform.
Like mobile was an extension of the normal web too?
Yeah.
Something like that?
Yeah, this is going to be more fundamental though, because when web came to mobile, that was a big thing, but it didn't change the paradigm. It was still 2D content in a 2D rectangle on a 2D
smaller
display.
Yeah.
This is going to be 3D content, spatially composed, multiple users in a 3D space, which is different to your normal web browser, and multiple services being composed into that 3D space, which again is different to the typical way people use the 2D web today. But we need it, because no one is going to have, with their smart glasses walking around the street, no one wants to say, oh, here's an interesting landmark, I need to install an application. No one's going to do that. That's like the web. The 3D web environment is going to just load up, often triggered by location. So there's a whole stack of 2D web standards to enable the web today. We're going to need a whole stack of different types of 3D web standards to enable this platform to come into being. I think that the industry needs a sandbox where we can actually try building this and trying out the different standards that can contribute to this. Do they work or not in practice? Where are the gaps? And actually try things to get. There's lots of unsolved problems, many of which are going to need standardization. Creating a Metaverse browser open source collaborative sandbox, I think would, if I were master of the universe, that's what I would do tomorrow. I think that would be a great environment where we could all mutually help each other and learn what needs to be done.
Awesome. So thank you very much that far, Neil. Now we are here at the UnitedXR conference. UnitedXR is, I think, a great name for the topic. And of course, you are standing for that, not for the conference itself, but the name UnitedXR, I guess you're totally behind that.
Yeah, sure. Yes. No, the standardization is a collaborative endeavor. And
is it a democratic endeavor also?
And yes, absolutely. It needs to be democratic, else it won't get buy-in, it won't get, the standards won't get used. And beyond standards, we are on the beginning of a journey to build this thing. Whether we call it the metaverse or not really doesn't matter. I do believe that spatial computing is going to change the way that we interact with our computing, in a very fundamental way. And a lot of the folks here at UnitedXR, they have that same vision. And the wonderful thing about UnitedXR, just like AWE in the US, we come for the technology, but we stay for the community. There's a real community here. People realizing that we're just at the beginning of this journey, but the only way we're going to do it is if we all work together.
That's a perfect final word for this interview. Thank you very much, Neil Trevett, Vice President Developer Ecosystems at NVIDIA, Khronos President, and also President of the Metaverse Standards Forum. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
And that was Neil Trevett live from UnitedXR in Brussels. I hope this conversation gave you a better grasp of the strategic side of the metaverse and how standards like USD and glTF are evolving. If you found value in this episode, please share it with a colleague or on LinkedIn. And a quick reminder, if you want to help me cover more international events and keep spatial realities running, please consider supporting the show via Ko-fi. You'll find the link along with other English episodes of this podcast right there in the show notes. Thank you for listening. I'm Thomas Riedel. See you in the next reality.